Well, welcome to podcast episode. This is episode 7 now. Wow,
Lucky
amazing.
number seven.
Episode the lucky number 7, and you can tell my background is a little changed up. I'm in Lake Tahoe, so don't even worry about if you hear some wind, some rain. Kyle's in Florida, so there might be some tropical storms coming inbound. So we're just gonna make this work though, as we always do. My wonderful guest today is Kyle fucking Lopes. And for those of you that are sensitive to swearing, I apologize for that. But this is a legend in not only my life, but the life of countless individuals. This guy is a just he sets the standard for what it is to just be not only just a high achiever in terms of like business success, sports, education, but also just personal development. I look up to Kyle a lot. I consider him like an older brother, and there have been times where we have been together and people have said, "Oh, is that your brother? Is that your brother?" Like to either of us, and we're like, "Yup, this is my brother right here," and it's fun playing along. And I've known him for about 7 years through the Cutco space. He was already like a very high achiever when I was brand new, so like he probably didn't even know I existed at first when I was brand new until I started actually like making some noise and creating some waves and whatnot in the Cutco space, and then I'm sure Kyle can fill in the details here, but grew up in Los Gatos, played hockey all his life, and joined Cutco right out of high school. And instead of going to college right away, he dabbled in the semi-pro hockey sphere, and that took him a lot of places. And I'm sure he can dive into what that was like. And then ended up going to school, West Valley College in is that in Los Gatos as well?
Saratoga, yeah, right next to it.
Yeah, same kind of area, and he excelled there and ended up, a lot of stuff happened, but he ended up going to Columbia. And through Cutco, he was able to pay his way through Columbia, which is for those of you that don't know, it's a very prestigious Ivy League school. He was on the hockey team, the club hockey team, part of the fraternity there. I don't know exactly what fraternity. You could probably fill in the blanks on that. And shout out your boys there. And yeah, just continued to excel. Was the first student in Cutco history to sell $1 million while being a student. I'm sure he's probably heard that 1,000 times from people on podcasts or when people intro him to anything, because it's to be the only person to do something in a company that's been around for 75 years is quite significant. So got to put that in there. And then he decided to become a branch manager when COVID hit, and this is when we started working really closely with each other. And he became the first manager in Cutco history to, again, another first, to sell $1 million in their first 8 months open as an organization. Won a silver cup as a rep, then won a silver cup as a branch, then won a silver cup as a new district manager. And I only have like 3 or 4 silver cups to your name, something like that. And just continued to lead the way and blaze the trail of what it's like to just be a leader in business. And even more so impressive to me was while he's running his district office, he's like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna fuck around and open up a solar company real quick as well, and just dive into that." And yeah, if I'll let Kyle take the floor right after this, but Kyle is somebody I see that breaks the barrier. He breaks the limits. Any limits that people put on ourselves, on other people, he's just like, you know what? Everyone thinks that this isn't possible. I'm going to show them that it is. And he creates a new trail for people to take in their own lives and really inspires a generation, in my opinion. And I know he has large aspirations in the rest of his life to just continue down this mountain or up this mountain, really, to these multiple peaks that he has. And so, Kyle, tell us a little bit about growing up in Los Gatos and going through hockey and who you were like as a kid, because I know that's always a funny bridge that you gapped from where you were as a kid to the person you've become today. So yeah, take the floor.
Awesome, Carson. And everybody, thanks for taking the time to support the podcast and listen to this episode. Appreciate you believing that this is worth your time, and I hope to bring a ton of value to you today. Yeah, just to give you some backstory, I mean, Carson did such a great job. Carson really is, one of my best friends and somebody who I view as a little brother, as he had mentioned. So blessed to have Carson as far as just being in my circle of influence and so close to me in my heart. And I grew up in California in the Bay Area, outside of San Jose, California, a little town called Los Gatos. And Los Gatos was such a blessing and a privilege to grow up there. You know, it was one of the most affluent areas of California. Most of the people that lived in that particular town, the parents worked in tech, or they worked in finance, or they were founders, or they were they ran a startup, something like that. And so there was just incredible opulence and affluence that you were surrounded by on a day-to-day basis. My family worked really, really hard. My dad worked really, really hard with my grandfather. They ran a business that my grandfather had started. And we were never like wealthy. We were probably like one of the poorer families in the town, but we always had enough, and that was a blessing. I have four little brothers, Nick, Eric, Alec, and Vaughn. And so I'm the oldest of five boys. And my mom was born in Vietnam, so I'm part Asian. And I definitely grew up in like a tiger mom household where there were high expectations academically from me to make sure that I excelled and I provided a good example for my little brothers. Um, what else? Yeah, I played sports. I played baseball as a little kid, then I played soccer. I always wanted to play hockey. I went to my first San Jose Sharks like professional hockey game before I was even one. I sat in my grandpa's lap in my diapers, and I just knew like this is what I want to do. But I wasn't allowed to play until I was a little older, so I didn't actually start playing until I was 14, and then had a lot of catching up to do to the kids that were sort of, born with skates on and had been playing their whole lives. So I worked really hard all the way through high school. Um, Continued to work really hard in the classroom as well, tried to pull good grades, again just trying to be a good role model. I was tutoring my like junior and senior year, trying to make some money so that way I could afford the gas and the hockey sticks, because the hockey sticks are crazy expensive and ice time's expensive, and just trying to do everything I could to make sure that I was able to be the best that I possibly could be as far as a hockey player is concerned. And when I graduated from high school, I applied to a bunch of different schools, got denied from a lot of them, even though I was pretty good academically. I took APs, I took honor classes, I graduated with like above a 4.0 in high school, but I got denied from like all of the schools I wanted to go to. And I got into Boston University, and I was really, really excited to go to Boston University. And again, just from the town that I grew up in, pretty much all of my classmates, their parents were paying for college. It was never even a conversation or a question, like every single person. And so I just, I just felt privileged. I just thought, okay, cool. Like, my parents are paying for school. I'm going to go to Boston University. And my parents had had a really bloody divorce when I was in sixth grade, where they had spent most of their net worth just like fighting in courts and splitting things up. It was in 2008, so the recession happened, so we had to liquidate a lot of our family assets to pay off the lawyers, and so we went from a family that like always had enough to being one that like didn't really have very much, and now was split between two households. And so I was sat down and I was told like, hey, we don't have the money for college. You're gonna have to figure this one out. And so that was a huge wrench in my gears. I had never really been planning on that. I didn't have any money to my name to speak of to afford going to college. I'm sure many people find themselves in that same situation. And so I decided, you know what? If I could get an athletic scholarship for college, that would make this financial burden a lot easier to bear. And so I worked really, really hard in hockey. I tried out for a few different teams, and I was able to make a team in Stevens Point, Wisconsin when I was 18. And so I moved out to the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin, like right in the middle of the state. I didn't know anybody out there, never lived or been to the Midwest before. And I played hockey there for a year. I got to experience my first brutal winter, which Carson knows a lot about brutal
Yeah.
winters. And then the next year, I played in Montana, in Bozeman, Montana, when I was 19. The year after that, I played in Medford, Oregon, and then in Denver, Colorado. And then my last year, when I was 21, I played in southern New Hampshire in a town called Laconia. So I had a chance to live all over the US. While I was doing that, as Carson mentioned, I was selling Cutco, and I was trying to find a way again to finance my hockey aspirations, be able to put gas in my car, feed myself, things like that. And so I was never like the top rep during those years from like 18 to 21. I was doing it part-time. I would do it when I moved to different areas. So I had to learn how to like build leads from scratch and communicate and build rapport with strangers and things like that. And then after hockey, when I was 21, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm gonna go back to school and I'm gonna see what I can do now, academically, and see if I can transfer to any better schools. So I went to West Valley College, it's like a junior college in San Jose. worked really hard for 2.5 years there, both academically and then also with Cutco. And those were the years where I really broke through some ceilings, some glass barriers that I'd had on myself as far as what I thought was possible. Um, I had a goal of selling $225,000 in 1 year. My freshman year of college, I think that was like 2016, and um, a I think actually only one student had ever done that before. One or two students had ever done that before. And I was taking like 21 units, and I was playing hockey, and I was coaching a hockey team with my little brothers on it and stuff like that. And I ended up selling 267,000 and breaking the all-time record, which was pretty awesome. I never thought that was possible at the beginning of the year. So, it was my first six-figure year. I earned a Rolex from the company, which was super motivating for me, not for myself. I'm not very flashy, but rather because I wanted to give it to my grandfather. He had a Rolex that had gotten stolen from him at one point, and that was really motivating for me to like be able to gift him one, to replace the one that got stolen. And then the next year, I continued to work really hard in 2017. I broke my own record, did a little over $270,000 that year. And then, as Carson had mentioned, I did a bunch of college apps, and my academic advisors at school were like, hey, don't even bother applying to the Stanfords and the Harvards and the Columbias and the Yales because we've never had anybody transfer into those schools. It's a waste of your money. It costs $75 at an application. Like,
I did
don't
not
bother.
know any of this. That's crazy. They literally were advising you to not shoot for the stars.
Yeah, they were just like, have more realistic expectations, which I think will be a theme of what we talk about today, right? The expectations that others place on you, and whether you go with it and roll with it and say, okay, cool, like others know best, or whether you decide, hey, you know what, like nobody can judge my potential except for me. And I was like, you know what, it's just money. I can't take it with me when I die, so might as well throw a bunch of darts and see if one happens to stick. And it did. I was able to get into Columbia. I never thought in a million years that I ever was going to be judged smart enough or qualified enough to be able to walk among, elites in society, just being a super normal public school kid growing up, and was able to go there. It cost me a lot of money to live in New York City, pay for that school, to the tune of almost $100,000 a year. 70,000 for tuition. Then I had to live in Manhattan. Then I had to still feed myself and everything. So it was about 100 grand a year. And I paid for that with my Cutco money, and I was able to graduate debt free in 2020. And yeah, the rest is history. Carson already laid all that stuff out. I transitioned into management during COVID, did really well as a manager, learned a lot about myself and others, and how to lead, how to grow, how to nurture relationships, how to recruit and train and develop individuals, build an organization, develop people to go run their own branches of the organization at a high level. Started a solar company with a friend of mine who I really respected, who I'd known through a personal development group that I was a part of since 2016. And now, as of March of this year, I've transitioned into tech sales for a startup that's based out of North Carolina called Second Nature. And we work in the prop tech space. And that has, again, been very challenging and very rewarding. I've learned a lot so far in the like 6-ish months that I've been there, and looking forward to breaking a lot of barriers there too.
Yeah, I mean, just for all of you guys listening, guys and gals, I mean, as you can tell, there's a theme going on here that Kyle also briefly touched on of just like Kyle was a person that never ever listened to the peanut gallery. He always blazed his own trail, always broke the barriers. And Kyle, my question is to you, like, obviously the biggest gap that you really bridged was after you were done playing semi-pro hockey, you were going to West Valley College. Like, what really flipped that switch for you? What was it where you just like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I'm going to break all these records. I'm going to prove myself wrong. I'm going to do all these things that people said were impossible or I couldn't do this. Did you have a mentor? Was it like what was the thing? Yeah, it could be multiple things, but what was, that period where you're like, no, nah, fuck that. I'm going for it.
Yeah, I think it was something that I've been doing since I was a kid. And like whether it was my mom saying like, oh, you can't play hockey, or it was somebody else saying like, oh, you're not going to be good enough to make that baseball or soccer team, whether it was somebody saying, oh, you're not going to be smart enough to hit X amount on a test or be the smartest in your class. People always were placing their barriers, their expectations, their perceptions on me. And there was always this like chip on my shoulder that I had around like, I'm going to prove you wrong. Like, you don't know who I am as much as you think you do. And I'm going to prove you wrong because I'm better than you're giving me credit for. And sometimes that came out in a little bit of a rebellious way, and there was friction, and I've had to come to terms with that and do better about that as I've gotten older. But I really believe that we shouldn't allow others to place barriers on us. Um, I saw the Will Smith movie with, I'm blanking on it, Pursuit of Happiness with his son. And the one scene that always stuck out to me, if any of you have watched it, is the scene where his son is like shooting a basketball and they're homeless and all he really owns is this basketball. His son does, this little kid. He's shooting a basketball on top of a roof and he like misses the net. And his dad's like, yeah, yeah, like you're probably gonna be just as good as I was, so you should probably just focus on your studies. And his son is like visibly dejected. And Will Smith notices, like, oh, wow, I just tore down my son's dream. Why did I do that? And so he tells his son, like, hey, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do something, especially me. Right. And that always just stuck with me as a little kid, seeing that, being like, yeah, I won't let anybody tell me what I can't do just because they couldn't do it. And so in 2016, when I did have that quantum leap in my results and my success and my income for the year, I think one, it was like just continuing that theme in my life of like, I won't let other people tell me what I can and can't do. I'll be the judge of that. The second thing was I did get a coach that year. I got a sales coach, and that was really pivotal for me to be able to focus on like the strategy of business. I think up to that point and really in life today, most people, they wake up every day, they go to their job, they work the 9 to 5 or 10 to 6 or whatever your hours are. Maybe you work the night shift, and then you cash your paychecks and you go home and you live your life, and that's it. And even when you run your own business, or even if you're a C-suite executive of a business, typically that's how it works. It's pretty monotonous, it's pretty mundane. You might put out fires here and there, but really like you're focused on the day-to-day process of the business. And that's fine. You can totally be successful, but very rarely will you experience the success or the increase of several magnitudes if you're always working in the business and not working on the business. And that was what the sales coach really helped me figure out, was I needed to stop focusing so much on the day-to-day tasks, the rat race every single day, and instead focus on, okay, cool, what are the higher leverage activities that I can be doing, the systems that I can implement, the people that I can hire to support various activities so I can spend more time working on the higher dollar per hour activities so I can work on the business and not just be another employee in the business.
Mm, that was huge. Who was the coach?
It was my first coach was was a guy named David Scoggins, and then
Yeah, Scoggins.
yeah, and then it was Danny Perez in 2016 was my next. He was like my sales coach, whereas Scoggins the year before was more of like a personal development coach.
Yeah.
And then after that, I started working with a company called Abundant with Ben Skemper, and that's been personal development focused.
Yeah, shout out to them at Abundant. I still just appreciate getting the invites. Even though I'm like I just can't make it. But I just like knowing that they are so welcoming to new people, like joining the community if they think it's a good fit is really cool. And I do want to ask you, like you mentioned David Scoggins was more of a personal development coach than a sales coach. How pivotal is it to have someone guide you in personal development? Because obviously, we could watch all the Instagram gurus and YouTube videos of, hey, this is what you need to do to develop yourself. You need to read, you need to meditate, you need to journal, you need to, go walk and drink a gallon of water. Like we know all these things, right? Why do so many people suck at them if they try to do it on their own? So what was it having a coach for you? Like how was that so important? How was that so pivotal, having a personal development coach and different than the sales coach?
Yeah, I mean, both of them were so valuable. They were just in different ways in my life. I think, the personal development coach really allowed me to focus on how am I treating myself, both as far as my food, my sleep, my rest, my hydration. my relationships. There were a lot of different areas of my life that I hadn't really thought of or prioritized as important up to that point because I was so focused on like getting ahead. And I was like, oh, let me prove all these people wrong in the work environment. And I'm going to sacrifice all of these other parts of my life in the pursuit of that one objective. And so he allowed me to really pause, shine a flashlight on, hey, yes, you are excelling in this one area, but all of these other areas are crumbling and you're not going to be satisfied. And the accountability that he provided for me in making sure that I did, whether it was my meditations or my breathing or my journaling or my rest or, just having conversations with people and really opening up and touching my feelings, touching my emotions, being somebody who could actually express emotion versus pushing it down because I viewed it as being like suboptimal to my highest performing or excelling self. Those were things that were really, really valuable. And then that continued with the sales coaching, the accountability the coach provides where you're paying them and you're paying them enough money to where it's like a massive pain point for you, where there's like even a little bit of concern around how am I going to keep paying them this? That provides a lot of um, motivation to make sure that you stay accountable to what you and your coach set together, the goals that you set.
Yeah, it's like I gotta make ends meet, like no matter what. And it does like give you that little extra fire under your butt to get it in gear. I think paying for coaching, it's kind of a pivotal or not a pivotal. It's a it can be a touchy topic for some people because like why would I pay to have someone coach me? It's because when you have money invested into this area of your life, you take it more seriously. You show up differently. You are like, hey, I'm paying for this. I'm going to get the most out of it. Whereas, like, yeah, if you weren't paying for coaching, very easy to neglect it. Like even paying for a gym membership is like, well, I'm paying for this gym membership. And how many people pay for a gym membership and still don't go? And it's like, yeah, like lucky me, I have the weight set in the backyard, so if I don't go, I'm like, all right, I'm not losing anything. But like even having a coach on the fitness side, the health and wellness side, just having mentors in your life in general is huge. And abundant, is something that I've followed pretty closely, from a outsider perspective, where I like see the retreats that you guys are going on, and I've talked to you about some stories, and you're like, dude, it's unexplainable. And about Champ Dev with Mike Chu, and that exists, and the different, they're same but different in a sense. Like they both do retreats focusing on spiritual, emotional, all of your wellness and health. Like what has abundant unlocked for you in your life? How did you even get introduced to it? And how has that really ramped you up to be the person you are today?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think so the way that I heard about this group was at the end of 2016. I was having my best year ever with my sales coach. It was going great. I'd learned so many different things. I'd implemented all these different systems and processes and was just so much more efficient than I ever had been in business. But I really did notice that my relationships were suffering. And so I received an invitation to go to a 3-day event that they were holding in San Francisco, and there were a few hundred people there, and I was super intimidated. The people that were there, many of whom were like the big talking heads in our company that were very, very successful. I was a nobody at the time. And these are people that I looked up to. And all of a sudden I was going to be in the same room as them. That was very intimidating. And then there were a lot of people who were just like extremely successful in other industries. And I didn't want to look or sound like an idiot if they were talking to me about something that was super industry specific. Maybe it was in tech. I'd never worked in tech before. Last thing I want to do is come across as like some moron and have everybody be like, why did we invite this kid? I was 21 at the time. And so that was very intimidating. I think it was like $1,000 for the 3 days. So that was also a large amount of money for me. 21 years old. It's not like I was making a lot. I just finished hockey and I'm still a full-time student. And so it was a lot of money to put in there. But the person who reached out to me and invited me had said, it's like, do you want to be successful? It's like, yeah. It's like, and do you want to be fulfilled? It's like, yeah. And it's like, and if this event puts you on the track to be able to accomplish both of those things, how much would it be worth to you for the next like 50, 60 years, how much would it be with you? And I'm like, I don't know, like $100,000. And he's like, great, well, it's only 1,000. So like, if you're really serious about your success and your happiness and your wellness, then you'll be here. And if you're not serious, then you won't. And it's really just that simple. And that was again, right? Like, oh, he's doubting me. Like, so there was a little bit of part of that. Like, it was a great sales pitch. Don't get me
Yeah,
wrong.
no, I was gonna say you really dug right into the pain
It
point
was
there.
true, it was true. I'm in sales, so I know when somebody's like giving me BS, and it's just, and I understand it's just like a surface level sales pitch. And he was just being super real and shooting me straight and just being like, look, dude, like you're either serious or you're not, because everybody always says, oh, I want to do this, oh, I want to do this, oh, I want to do this. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, you don't. Like, you just like telling people that you want to do that.
Sounds cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. And how has that transformed? So obviously, like going into the first retreat, you're like, whoa, 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 like bright lights, flashy. You're like, wow, this is a lot. I kind of want to stay in my shell, but I know I need to break out. Like, how was it? Because like I was kind of in the same boat. My first retreat with Champ Dev, it was smaller scale. We only had like 40 people, but it was again like a lot of higher level people in our company and other industries. And I'm just like this dude that I'm just known for working out hard as fuck. And like I did some pretty cool business stuff, like, but not at the scale of all the other people there. And I was like, all right, well, all these people are super successful in business. I got the physical part down. I'm good there. So I know like that's kind of what kept me grounded and like confident where I was like, okay, I'm here to learn. Like how was it? Because I'm sure a lot of people out there are kind of scared to expose themselves to higher levels. They're super comfortable where they're at. Maybe they're like the more elite level person in their friend group, and their friend group's kind of on the lower level, and they need to break out into that higher threshold. And you don't have to leave your other friends that are on that same path, but you need to break out of that threshold if you want to achieve a higher level in your health, your well-being, your fulfillment, and also your success. So what advice do you have for people that are scared to take that jump?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's so normal. It's the first thing I would say. It's like you're not as special or particular that you think your situation might be. It's really just not that special. We're all like so much more alike than we are different. And there might be different nuances in your particular life, but we all are human. We feel and experience the same emotions, and we have the same fears, and we have the same doubts, inadequacies, things like that. And so I think, you know, you had some great people on this podcast prior to me, and I'm sure some of them have echoed the sentiment of like you are the average of the people you surround yourself with the most, right? The top 5 people. People that are listening to this have probably heard that ad nauseum over the course of their life. But I might even go a step further and be like, the vision of you that you have for your life 30, 40, 50 years from now. Like, how does that person stand and talk and walk and hold themselves? What are they doing? What's their level of business success, their level of emotional success, their relational success, spiritual success? Like, where are they? Right. And if you can come up with this ideal version of yourself and then be super objective,
Mm,
non-biased, and just be like, am I really on track to be that person right now with the things that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, with the people that I surround myself with right now on a day-to-day basis? I would imagine that most of us say no.
yeah.
And that was something that I had to really come to terms with, to be like, you know what? This is a lot of money. I'm really scared. I don't know how I'm going to make this work. And because I don't know how I'm going to make this work, I know that I have to. Like, if I'm scared, if I'm shying away from this, if this is the edge of my comfort zone, then the only way I'm ever going to get to my highest version of myself, the self that I dream of, I've got to be willing to get outside of my comfort zone and
Mm.
trust that I'll find a way to make everything work. And so, yeah, that first event was like $1,000. And then my coaching for the whole year to be a part of the program was like 20,000. And I was like,
No.
holy shit. Like my parents, I remember coming home and they're like, what the fuck are you doing? And I just said, hey, I just trust me. Like I got this. And I was so scared, but I just trusted that I would figure out a way to make it all work. And now I've been in that group for like 8 years. And you all can do the math. They had a higher level that I joined one of the years, and so I probably invested over the course of the last decade like a little over $200,000 in my personal and professional development. But I have some pretty large aspirations, and I've told Carson about this before, but it's probably good to share with everybody. Like, my goal is to be president of the United States someday, and whoop, whoop, whoop.
Oh,
And so in order to be that person for myself and for my family and for my community and for my state and for all of Americans, like, I need to be willing to put my money where my mouth is. I need to be willing to grow to be the type of person that people feel like, okay, cool, like I could get behind that individual. I could get behind that person. That person speaks for me. That person knows where I'm coming from. And I can only do that if I walk the walk and not just talk the talk.
yeah. Oh, I feel that. I was gonna get to that. I was like, oh man, I'm glad you brought that up organically too. And yeah, no, the same thing with the Champ Dev, man. Like I got into our lower level like package at first, the entry to see how it is, and I was like, this is awesome. And then I joined the 20K a year program, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh my goodness. This is a lot, but it was, and then yeah, I got a lot of shit from people for that. They're like, dude, you could have bought a house with that. And, looking back, I was in there for 3 years. I was like, yeah, I probably could have bought a house. Probably could have bought stuff. But where would I have been? How much would I love myself if I was living in that space of, oh, what if I did join that group? What if I invested in myself more instead of buying a house or buying a material thing that's, gonna come and go at some point. Like I will always be in this vessel. I need to be really, really awesome at being in here, comfortable at being in here, loving myself, and I will attract all of the things that I need in my life, all of the material stuff, all the money. Like, there's so much money out there. There's so much damn money out there to be made, and we have a limited amount of time. So investing my youth into myself instead of buying more stuff is something that I take a lot of pride in now. Something that I'm like, yeah, I'm so grateful that I did that. Cause yeah, could I have bought a house or bought a thing? Yeah, probably, but I wouldn't be so in love with who I am today and have all of these beautiful relationships with people today if I didn't do that. And so now kind of pivoting into leadership and challenge, like what made you want to go into branch? Like what made you want to get into the leadership of things? Because started as a rep doing your own sales and you were crushing it. You're a top in the company, and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, I want to make a pivot. And it was kind of before COVID even happened and like shut down the world. You are already made this decision. So what really caused that spark within yourself to want to lead people?
Yeah. Great, great question. And just to sort of, I guess, echo Carson's sentiment, like, with the spending of a lot of money, it's not to impress anybody that watches or listens to this down the road, but rather just to share fully, like authentically and transparently, like, this is where I was at, and like, this is the vulnerability behind it. And hopefully, you feel like that speaks to you as well. Because at the end of the day, it's sort of what Carson was saying is just the best investment that you can make on yourself, and it has the best ROI compared to anything else, compared to the increased value of the home that you buy, or the trip that you might take. Yeah, it's a great life experience, but the investment in yourself and your growth will have the largest ROI. So keeping on theme with that, Carson, you had asked just why did I decide to switch over to management if I was having so much success as an individual contributor. And a lot of it came from the same idea of like, if I'm really going to grow, if my ultimate aspiration is to lead people, well, I should probably practice that at some point in my life. And so yeah, it was a combination of really two different factors. One, I was graduating from college. I interviewed with a lot of different companies. I had a lot of different opportunities. Some of them paid really, really well. They were very exciting, got stock options and the whole nine yards. And and I just realized, I was like, you know what? There's one thing that I haven't done that I've always like an itch that I've always wanted to scratch a little bit, and that was like lead a team, build an organization from scratch, teach and train and recruit and develop people, build relationships with people, and just prove to myself and to others that like I can be a leader. I think everybody talks about it. Oh, like, I'm such a good sales rep, I could definitely be a leader. But there's an analogy. I actually shared this at a conference previously. And actually, let me pull this up super quick so I don't ruin the analogy.
Yeah, do
Um,
it. Do it.
this is something that I shared at a company-wide event and got a little bit of flack for, but I think I got flack because of how real it is.
Yeah, it
Uh,
probably right like it probably touched people in their egos a little bit.
so this was an analogy that I shared with a couple hundred managers at Cutco. It was our company-wide meeting, and I was on stage and I said, is anybody familiar with how the first orchestra ever started? And the way that it goes, Carson, is in the beginning, there were only wind instruments in the orchestra. And then they noticed that many people weren't talented enough to play the wind instruments. So they gave them these large boxes with wires strapped across them, and they called them the strings. And then they noticed that some people couldn't even figure out how to play the strings. So they took away the box and they gave them two sticks and told them just hit whatever you want, and we're going to call you the percussionist. And then they noticed that there was one percussionist that was so bad, he couldn't even do that. And so they took away one of his sticks and they told him to just stand in front and wave it around in front of everybody. And that was the birth of the first conductor. And it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek analogy, but it really is true. In many organizations, you have people in positions of leadership, whether it was through nepotism or maybe just through tenure, that really had never proven any type of proficiency in any of the roles before that, and really were just unqualified to be leaders. But they or somebody else thought that they should lead. And that's the death of the organization, or that's the death of democracy. That's the death of our country, putting people in positions of power that really should
Mm,
don't have the experience or the expertise or the proficiency to be there. And so I wanted to prove to myself early on that I can be a leader and not just like I think I can be a leader.
yeah.
So that was a big thing. I also just realized COVID was happening and I realized that there was going to be a massive shift in the industry in the whole global situation. And so I realized that while I might take a new role, that's probably going to look radically different in a couple months once COVID actually shuts things down. I wasn't sure exactly how long things
Yeah.
were in
Yeah.
the sense of like
No,
how.
we were in such an unknown area of everything going on.
Yeah. So I just realized I was like, you know what? If I'm ever going to make this pivot, if I'm ever going to try this even for a little while, I might as well now because we're probably going to have a brief period. I wasn't sure how long it was going to be, but we're probably going to have a brief period where it's like the second enlightenment. And
Yeah.
we have this opportunity. Every single one of us as human beings has an opportunity right now with this time to learn a new skill, develop a new habit, do something that's going to help you for the rest of your life. And I wanted to take advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah, no, and boy, did you take advantage of it. I mean, you jumped right into it, just dove in. You didn't have a staff, you didn't have a team, you didn't even like know how to work our systems yet. You just like being such a new person into the space of leadership, especially like being a manager specifically, like what what were some of the key tips that just got you like shortening that learning curve because there's such a big learning curve. There's all these forms you need to fill out, interviews, and it just there's a lot that goes into running an organization of any kind, especially like a Cutco branch office. And what were things that you did to really just help shorten that learning curve so that you could, yeah, to start seeing success right away?
If I could dumb it down to just three things, I think the first thing would be that I reached out to people that I knew were already successful so I could learn the best practices and I could avoid the pitfalls. They always say, like, what's the fastest way to become a billionaire? Surround yourself with other billionaires, right? And so I wanted to make sure that I identified who were the top leaders, who were the people that were killing it, who were the people that have been doing really well for a long period of time, had shown that they were consistent and not just a flash in the pan. And like I just picked their brains. I asked for time. I reached out. Some of them rejected me. Some of them never replied. Yeah, it hurt a little bit, but people actually tended to be really generous with their time and their knowledge. And so that was really helpful to avoid all of the things that they had to experience that were negative experiences. So I didn't have to experience those same things. And I was able to sort of jump over that and that obstacle. The second thing is just work ethic. Like I realized I was so far behind. It was the same thing with hockey. I was so far behind my peers that I wasn't going to be able to catch them or beat them based on sheer natural talent. like I had to outwork them. And they always say that like hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, right? And so I really wanted to, embody that mantra of like I'm just going to work really really hard. I'm going to outwork everybody, and there will never be an excuse for why I didn't succeed that could be attributed to I didn't try hard enough. And so I shared my calendar with a bunch of people previously, but
I've
there were
seen.
was like I worked over 100 hours every single week for over a year, and that included like Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like I made a very intentional, conscious effort to outwork everybody and try to expedite my learning curve and shorten that learning curve as you mentioned. Um, and then I think the third thing is just like due to my personal development, the growth that I experienced for I think it was like 5 years up to that point of just personal development work. I was just such a more heart-centered leader. And I think people really just were naturally attracted to the authenticity of what I was sharing with them. I wasn't just like selling them a pipe dream. I was really just showing them one from my own personal success. Because again, like I wasn't the conductor waving the stick at the front who had never had success before. I was very successful as a sales rep before I became the conductor. But then I also was just super open and honest with them. I said, hey, I want to help you experience that same level of success. I want to help you be able to accomplish and even do better than all the things that I ever did. Please just trust in me, and I promise you that I will not that trust will not be misplaced. And I think people just felt the sincerity in that, and as a result, we were able to build something pretty incredible together.
Oh yeah, it was awesome to see, and just even watching the people that you have impacted and where they are at now, whether they're still in the organization or not, and like how close they are still to you, and just that impact that you've had over many years. I mean, the one person I think of right off the top of my head is TCG, Therese, and just like watching her develop into a top branch manager in the Bay Area, and then also in the Western region this last summer. And then now she's killing it sales wise, right? Like kind of taking really kind of filling in your shoes on the events team, like she broke her own best record ever at the Alameda County Fair. And like that was your keynote event right there. And it's like, man, like how proud of you or proud are you of just the impact you were able to leave? And I don't know, I feel like you could dive in a lot on just like the many different people that you've impacted, that we both know through your organization. But just like, man, how fulfilling is that? Talk about fulfillment earlier when you're like, man, I feel like I'm not building relationships, I'm losing all these relationships, I'm so into my sales, I'm not having these relationships I want. And now you're at a point where you could probably reflect on your Cutco career and you're just like, wow, I left quite the mark. Like, how does that feel?
Feels awesome, man. Like it truly does. It feels great to be able to know that I did right by people. And Um, my original boss, Dan Casetta, who's also one of your original mentors, is somebody who really impressed upon me the idea of like, how can I leave things better than I found them?
Mm.
I don't know how long I'm going to be here, with this company, but also like here on the planet, and it's like, how do I just leave things better than I found them? How do I leave every interaction, every person that I interact with better than I found them? Every situation, every company, my society, that is something that resonates very, very deeply with me. The idea of like, how can I just help as many people as possible? Both present day and in the future. How can I help my future kids who aren't even born yet make sure that they live just an incredible life and that they are great people themselves that help others. And so, yeah, being able to see the success of somebody like a Therese or Sean, it was his 21st birthday last night, and I shot him a
Yeah,
text.
I saw that.
And he was hanging with Therese, for his 21st, getting his first legal drink. And so many others that it'd be hard to just name a few. I'd feel like I was leaving people out, but it feels tremendously gratifying and is a major motivator for me to want to aspire to become the commander in chief, because I believe that I can impact the most amount of people possible in a positive way in that role.
Yeah, you have my vote. Like all day, every day. I've told people this. Like when you told me this years ago, I was like, it's just this is how I explain you to people. I'm like, so there's people that say they grow up saying I want to be the president of the United States, and you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. But then for some reason, when Kyle told me, I remember where we were at. I'm pretty sure we were in Vegas, and
Mhm.
uh, we were either at COC or we did that one trip with Dave where he like kind of did a little mini P banquet with us. And you're like, yeah, Carson, I want to be the president of the United States. And for some reason, you said it to me at the straightest face of like, I like not wavering in your confidence in what you just said to me at all. It was all seriousness, and it hit me, and I was like, yeah, I believe him. He's gonna do it. Like there was not an ounce of doubt in my being from you that you were like it was going to happen. Like it's already done. I'm already it. And that's pretty powerful. Like me hearing that, and I was like, yeah, let me know how I can support, dog. Like I'm here. Where other people, if they were to say that, I'd be like, all right, good one. And I don't know what it was about you, but it was your poise, your seriousness. Obviously, I know what you've done and I know who you've already impacted. I mean, you've built a community within your own organization and sub communities within that. And on a smaller scale, you've already done it, which is really cool to watch. And I just, yeah, it's going to be cool to watch the process. What is the biggest challenge in your way?
The biggest challenge in my way. Um,
What a broad question.
well, so here's something that I learned through my personal development, specifically through my work with Abundant. And it's something that I've really taken to heart over the last few years. And the the idea is that the greatest enemy to my leadership is my desire to be liked.
Oh, what a nugget. Everyone should write that one down.
Yeah, and it's just like, how often do I acquiesce to pressure? How often do I just like relent and allow somebody else to, you know, take the lead, even though I know, hey, I think this really is the best way to go. Um, how often do I defer to others? It's just like my desire to be liked, my desire to not cause friction, my desire to have friendships, relationships, oftentimes means that I choose to subvert what I believe to be best or right because I feel the pressure or even just I experience fear around how our other is going to respond. And that's not the way that I can carry myself if I really truly am going to be able to ascend to that position. And so that's something that I think about often. It's something that I've written down all over my house. It's something that I just I really am trying to embody more on a day-to-day basis. And that doesn't mean being rude or mean to people, but it does mean like holding my truth and speaking my truth and recognizing that like I cannot control how other people respond. If I just do it in the most respectful and authentic way possible, they're going to respond however they respond. And I can't control that's outside of my grasp, but I can control whether I speak my truth or not.
Yeah, like not compromising on your own values and your own beliefs just to be liked is, man, what a that just speaks to really everything that's kind of happening. I mean, it's election season, right? So you hear a lot of empty promises being made right now. And, this is not a political podcast whatsoever, but I think it is important to shine a light on just the fact that people will say anything for power, and it sucks. It truly does suck that there are not a lot of truly authentic leaders that are leading from the heart at the highest level. If you go to the, lower levels of just like business and sports, you see a lot of that. And the people that are the most successful at sports leadership or business leadership are typically leading from a place of groundedness and their heart, leading from love, where you get to this place where it becomes a power grab. People will say anything to get that vote. And it's tough. We live in a world where information is all over the place, and that doesn't mean it's accurate. That doesn't mean it's the truth. That doesn't mean that it's an objective truth with a capital T, because that's different from something being true. Something being true doesn't mean it's the absolute truth with a capital T. So Kyle, like, how do people find information like correctly, because I know you're a very well informed person, you are well read. um what is your advice to people that want to become um more informed, better informed, with the truth with a capital T, instead of just finding things that are true to what they believe? Big difference.
Mm,
But things that are true to you are typically because you believe a certain thing, and so that resonates with you better, so you believe it, but it's not the actual truth.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, that is a great question, Carson. And I think I don't want to make anybody believe that I'm like that I think that I'm perfect or anything like that.
The
I'm still
oracle.
also trying to discern what is the truth versus what is just my confirmation bias.
Yeah.
And um, I think there's a couple different things that us as just like independent, you know, custodians of society can do to better ascertain the facts and then draw our own conclusions. I think that one thing I was sharing this with my current boss is like, I identified a situation within the organization that I was concerned about. And instead of just bringing up a concern or complaining, which is oftentimes what we do, we complain and then we just sort of like leave it out there. It's like, let me go ahead and bring this up because this is on my heart, and then let me also provide a potential solution. And it might not be the best solution and it might be a totally shitty idea, but let me go ahead and at least try to bring a different alternative forward. So I'm at least trying to help create a solution as opposed to just pointing out problems. And because the first person, the person that just points out problems, the person that's not solution oriented, they're just
Mhm.
lazy and fearful, rejection, fearful of reprimand for bringing forth a bad idea. And so it's lazy. They just point out problems. It's also lazy when somebody researches, which to be clear, like unless you read studies and you look at the sources and you read the sources and you do those things, then you are not researching anything. You're just Googling something,
Yeah.
right? If you read a blog, you're not a researcher. And I think it's really important, especially in society, the precision in the language that we use is so, so, so critical, right? We have thousands and thousands of words in our dictionary that we can choose from. And when we stop using language precisely, it really is a hindrance to us being able to have a true understanding of where we're coming from. And so, when you look something up, when you Google something, that's not researching it. And so when you read or you hear of news from a particular source, there are all kinds of different sources online where you can see where on the spectrum a particular news media falls as far as their bias, whether it's left leaning, right leaning, centrist, and then recognize that even somebody that falls in the middle on those various rating charts, they also are human beings and they might have their own internal biases that might skew the language or the perception, the lens of a particular article or a report one way or the other. And so you always want to read things with the intention of like, let me go ahead and just get the facts from this article without the skew, and then I'll be able to go ahead and make my own judgment from that. And I have a friend, um I won't name his name, but I have a friend right now who's like really really blowing up on social media and is becoming more and more known. And the reason why is because he grew up as somebody who was a staunch uh advocate and member of the Democratic Party. And then in this most recent election, he decided, hey, you know what? Like I'm more independent. I'm gonna go with the independent candidate. And then over the last few weeks, he continued to objectively look at his points of view and read information. And he wasn't afraid to say, hey, you know what? I've actually been wrong about some of the things that I believe or some of the things that I looked at. And actually, I no longer support this candidate. I now support this candidate. And it's not because I want to support the winner. And it's not because I'm, bending my knee to what other people said. It's actually because like I realized I was wrong. And that's okay to be wrong. And I'm going to own the fact that I was wrong. And so I'm now supporting this person instead. And I think that that's okay. I think it's important for us to always read things, learn things, be open to the fact that something might not be the way that we think it is. And that's okay. Like it's okay for us to realize that never going to be dealing with all the cards in our hand. And as new information becomes available, we should be able to be fluid and make the best decisions that we can with the information that we have at that moment.
That was such a great answer. That was way better than of an answer than I could have ever explained. And I love what you said right there is like something I explain to people when I'm like giving my own opinion or anything that I don't think is like solid factual. Like, hey, I'm super open to being wrong. But, and then I'd say it because I am, and I don't want to be wrong, but but I know I'm going to be wrong a lot more than I am going to be right. Because as much as I think I know, there's way more that I don't know than I do. Right. And there's that, like, I know in Cutco we were taught, like, hey, here's everything we know. Here's everything we know we don't know. And then here's everything we don't know that we don't know. Like, we don't know shit about shit at the end of the day. And there's, uh, if you have this ego that you have to be right about everything, you're going to live a really disappointing life because you're going to realize you are so wrong. And failure is a big part of life, right? That's like a lot of people, they don't want to be wrong because it's failure and they don't want to fail. We always put such a negative lens on failing. And I think society has made it failing as a bad thing. But I feel like you and I have failed so much to be able to see the success, right? And in theme with this podcast being the mountain, it's simply just falling, right? Slipping down, tripping, having to walk through a creek. And yeah, we missed our footing and we fell a little bit and traveled down the creek a little bit, had to regather our stuff, recompose a plan, recompose ourselves and our beings, and then continue on because there's no going back once we already start this journey, right? And I feel like that's why you've gotten so far in your life as you have, because you didn't give yourself another choice, right? When something would take you off the path, you would find a way back on it. And so can you just speak to like how failure has shifted in your life, and what are some of like the pressing failures in your life that really stand out to you where you're like, oh my goodness, without this failure, I'm not here at this peak of the mountain or towards the top of where you want to be.
Yeah. Um, gosh. So I mean, I'll go ahead and share one that's like work related, and then I'll share one that's more personal. The work related one that comes to mind for me right away is as a new rep in Cutco, there are sales competitions like there are with most sales companies. And so there's a sales competition we have, it's called a push period. It's basically like a 2.5 week period where people try to work as hard as they can to sell as much of the product as possible. And there's certain levels. And Cutco, it's not a very expensive product. They're like unit cost is typically like right around $100 per item. And so this particular, these competitions, the main threshold that people try to get to is like, can they sell $10,000 worth of product in this like 2.5 week period? And it's not easy. Like it requires a lot of work. You typically are up early at the office at like 8 a.m., grinding, hustling until the evening. And so it's not easy. And I remember my first summer when I was 18, my goal was to hit this like $10,000 thing. And I sold $8,000. And I was like, oh darn, okay, well, I'll get it next time. So at the end of the summer, they have a second try. And I worked really, really hard that time. I worked way harder and I sold 8,000 again. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Like, and then the third time, my next summer, I'm 19, and I work really, really, really hard. I sell $8,000 again. And I'm like, oh my gosh, maybe this is just impossible. Maybe I will never be able to accomplish this because I'm not a rich kid and I don't know rich people. And like, I've already worked super hard. So there's just no way that I can do this. And so I've like failed 3 times in a row, you know? And it comes to try number 4 at the end of that summer. I'm 19 and I'm talking to my manager. His name's Mike. And Mike was like, hey, like, how bad do you want to get to 10,000? I was like, dude, I want it bad. He's like, how bad? I was like more than anything. And he's like, all right, well, I want you to put your money where your mouth is. I want you to write me a $1,000 check. Right. And like everybody checks is like these booklets you like write on, but like checks, right? Like a physical check. And so he's like, write me a $1,000 check. And I'm going to take a thumbtack and I'm going to put it in the back of the office on the wall. And every single day that you come in, you're going to look at that check. And if you don't sell your $10,000, I get to cash the check. And that's it. Like, and I'm like 19, everyone. Okay. I have no money. I think I had $600 in my bank account. I'm not even kidding. So for him to to tell me to write him a $1,000 check, it's more than I even own in the entire world. And I did it because I was super scared. But I knew that like if I was really serious about this goal after having failed multiple times, if I really wanted to actually achieve it, I had to be willing to get outside of my comfort zone because I believed that I could do it. And I knew that there was something that was stopping me. There was that little extra where I wasn't willing to go there. And by the end of the first week, I was at 8,000 and I finished the contest at 16,000.
Oh, crushed it.
Just demolished it, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, I just need to get to like 10,001. And I got to 16. And like, it was yet another reminder to me and something that continued to just be a trend throughout the rest of my life after that, that like my potential is so much greater than even I give myself credit for.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. And then I think from the personal perspective, I'd said that there were two stories. I would just go back to like I wasn't very good at hockey when I was new. I was like 14 and I'd played other sports and I was like, yeah, I was athletic, but I had to like learn how to ice skate and I looked like Bambi. And people just like they preyed on me. Other good players, they preyed on me. It's a physical sport and I got hurt and they would just like they would take advantage of the fact that I wasn't good and that I was very novice and they would catch me in vulnerable positions and they would just crush me with like body checks and it was really painful and it was embarrassing and it was frustrating and there were so many times where I wanted to quit. There were so many times where I'm like, this is not worth it. Like I went from being really good at my other sports to being unbelievably terrible at this sport and it is flat out embarrassing. And and yeah, it was painful. I had bruises all the time. My ankles, my knees were swollen. I couldn't walk. Like I was hobbling all the time. It just like people at school were looking at me funny. It was just all of those things. And I just realized that, you know what? I can only do the best that I can do. And I've never been a quitter. I've never been somebody who just like hangs it up early. And so I kept working hard. I kept working hard. I slowly got better. And when I tried out for those teams when I was 18, because I wanted to play semi-pro hockey, I didn't make the first few teams. And I was like, wow, all right, well, I guess the dream's dead. But there was one more opportunity for that team in Wisconsin. And I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot and I was the last kid to make it. You know, I was the very last one. And yeah, I mean, I think you can tell at this point in the episode a theme in my life, but it's just like you never know until you've laid it all out there.
Yeah, and that's why I relate with you so much because it was the same exact thing for me with wrestling, man. Started when I was 14. Everyone else has been doing it since they were 7 or 8. Just and yeah, wrestling similar to hockey. I put wrestling and hockey up there as the hardest sports. Just the hardest sports. There's nothing that comes close to wrestling and hockey. Yeah, I mean MMA, of course, and boxing is up there too. But it's one of those things that yeah, you have a huge advantage over people if you started it before you were 10 years old. And going into it at 14, I was just getting dogged like every day in practice, just yeah, getting slammed, getting taken down. But there's that one thing inside of me, and I'm sure you felt the same thing too, where I was just like, man, one day I'm gonna be so fucking good at this. I'm gonna be able to do this to that kid or those kids. Like, I don't know, that was my drive. Like I had vision, and that's such an important part of just any endeavor in life is just having that long-term vision. Like, where do I want to go with this? And I didn't think it would ever take me to college. There's kids that dream when they're 7, 8, 9, 10 years old and they start wrestling. They're like in hockey, like, I want to do this in college. I want to do this, in the Olympics or this, that. And for me, that was never the goal. The goal was just like, I just want to be good. Like, I just want to be good enough to be able to like take people down and like defend myself in situations. And yeah, by the time I was a senior, I was like, dang, I'm MVP of my high school team and team captain. Like, damn, I placed the best at our section tournament. I'm just getting good at this. Why would I stop? So explored the collegiate route and didn't have the greatest grades. I didn't perform the best in the state, not even close, didn't even qualify for the state tournament. So I went junior college, similar to you. That's why I just feel like all these years, Kyle, I'm like, this is my dog. Like we went through the same path, just different routes. We were both just going through the same challenges, and yeah, then went through junior college, and I did pretty damn well enough to earn a scholarship. But It was the only scholarship I had, and it was to North Dakota, pretty close to Wisconsin. You were the last person to get picked. I had one scholarship offer, and it's like, great, like time to be the worst guy on the team again, and then prove everyone that I'm the best at the end. And like, I think you and I really have that. Nah, fuck that. I'm gonna prove everyone wrong. Like, I know I have so much more within me, and a lot of people they don't see that vision within themselves, and it all starts with your inner vision. So like, how does someone develop that vision within themselves to conquer these challenges? Like, that's not a thing. That's not something that people have, is that grit to just get your ass whooped over and over and over. Like Marshawn Lynch says, over and over and over and over and over. How does someone develop something like that if they have always been the best achiever? Everything comes easy to them, because that doesn't last. As you know, I'm sure you've seen people growing up in the Los Gatos area, growing up, playing hockey and getting to Columbia, where you've seen people that most of their life things just come easy to them over and over until it doesn't, and they don't know how to deal with that. So how can someone develop that?
Wow. What a great question, Carson. I think so speaking specifically to the people that have always been high achievers, the people who like maybe they were the most naturally athletic or naturally intelligent, and they always scored super high without trying. They always were the fastest kid on the team without working out, things like that. You're right, like it doesn't last. It doesn't last forever unless you keep working at it. And even then your minds, they just break down. We're human beings. So I think um speaking to the people who have always been really good at something, and then those first few times where they start to struggle or they start to realize, oh, I'm not nearly as special as I thought I was, that is your first point of adversity. I can tell you from going to my university, there were a lot of kids, like a lot of kids that were in my class that were like the valedictorian of their school, that gave their like the graduation speech at their high school graduation, that like they went to the prep schools, they had the special tutors for the SAT or the ACT. I had one kid the first day of class where the teacher was giving us a syllabus with all the books that we had to read for the course. And he's sitting at the front of the class and he goes, "Hi, professor, would you like us to read this in English or in the original Latin text? Because I've actually read all of these in Latin already." And I'm sitting there at the back of the class, scared shitless for my first day. I have imposter syndrome already. I'm like, bro, I don't even know what Latin looks like. And so, um, that kid did not score well in that class. He was totally posturing, and he did not perform nearly as well as me and a lot of the other classmates. And I think with a lot of these universities, especially the top universities, where all of a sudden you are the big fish in a small pond, and now you're the guppy in the big pond. There's a big rude awakening that exists for those people, and that adversity that all of a sudden they're experiencing for the first time leads to depression, leads to anxiety. It leads to parents getting involved and calling teachers and emailing teachers and being like, oh, you got to let my student out, or oh, you got to give them a makeup or whatever it is, right? And like all of a sudden you have to have your parents come and save you. And it builds mentally weak people. And
Mm,
the biggest, I would argue that the two biggest, um, I would say dangers to the success of the United States of America in the future and our world is people who um cannot talk to one another and listen to other points of view, right? The divisiveness that exists. And the second one would be people who lack any type of mental fortitude.
mm,
And when things always come easy for you, you never are challenged and have to develop the resiliency mentally to push through. And so, whenever something like that happens for you, whether you had a whole life of eating shit and you have
yeah.
to just keep getting up and you have to keep pushing through, like you and I have talked about, and there's so many other people like that, or life's been all daisies and all of a sudden the first hard things happen, and now like you got kicked down for the first time and you're like, oh, life's so unfair to me. um, there's a couple different things that I think are really important. The first thing is recognizing that like pressure is a privilege.
Mm,
There was somebody named Jesse Itzler who had spoken that at a meeting before I talked, and he had
yeah.
said that, yeah, pressure is a privilege because if I didn't experience pressure right now, if I wasn't nervous, if I wasn't scared, if I wasn't anxious about the outcome, then I probably don't care. And
Yeah.
that's really bad if I don't care about what I'm doing. And so
Mm,
pressure is a privilege. And if I'm upset that I didn't make the team or I didn't make the grade, good. I should be upset. That means I care. That means I should do better next time. I should work harder next time. I should aspire to do better than I did the first time around. And so I think that's the first thing. When you recognize that, you start to build that grit muscle that you were referring to, that resiliency, the mental fortitude around like, okay, cool. I'm the type of person who like I don't just excel when the tasks are easy. I excel when the tasks are hard too.
mm.
The one other thing that I would say I think is really helpful with um, becoming a type of person that can do challenging things is just seeking things that are outside your comfort zone. Um, Constantly reminding yourself, you might think that, oh my gosh, I've accomplished all these hard things up to this point. I am now at the pinnacle of success, the pinnacle of my potential. And it's like, nah, you haven't even touched it yet. You don't even know what it looks like yet because there's always something harder that you can do. And we as humans, like we actually thrive on it. I mean, you look at like CrossFit competitions, like these people are going out of their way to like beat themselves up, pummel themselves, push themselves to the brink of failure because they know that there's that little extra 2, 3, 4% that they could give that they haven't actually gotten out of themselves yet. And like we're designed as human beings at a fundamental level to be like, hey, there's something even better than what I've already done. Like we are inherently dissatisfied with the status quo. And that's a great thing as long as we realize that it can be used in a really productive way.
Yeah. No, I resonate with that so much with a lot of like different people in my life that like one that comes to mind is my buddy Tyler Schnaubert. He's going to be a guest on this podcast. He was my assistant coach and he got me to run my first official half marathon and he did not stop from there. He did not stop. He's just like, yeah, that was weak. I was like, because it was we both like to push each other hard and get the fuck after it. And so he was like, yeah, it was cool. That was like a good warm up for an actual marathon. And then like a few months later, he crushes an actual marathon and he started running marathons while he's coaching wrestling for fun. Just like, and then he was like, yeah, marathons are getting a little old. I'm like really looking for my first ultra. I'm like, you're insane. So he's like prepping for a 50-mile race right now. Um, Quick story about him. A couple weeks ago, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, Lily, who's his daughter?" He's like, he splits custody with her. He's like, "Lily's in town. I just signed up for a marathon tomorrow." I was like, "Have you been training for a marathon?" He's like, "Nah, I'm excited for the challenge though." And it's like, yes, that's what life is about. Is like planning things that are challenging that give you that reason to wake up in the morning, that give you a little bit of fear, a little bit of that extra push of like, fuck, I got to take this a little bit more seriously. And it's going to help elevate every aspect of your life. And what's funny for him, he was like, yeah, I signed up for this marathon in the New Mexico mountains. And he was like, bro, it was 9,000 feet of elevation we climbed. He's like, I fucking died on this one. Like, we had to climb two different mountains, like two separate 14,000-foot mountains. We had to climb two different ones. And like, yeah, he said it was extremely tough, but he's like, it's just prepping me better for the 50-mile one, like that one's gonna be cake now. There's not as much elevation change. And just that mindset of like, yeah, this is just what I have to do if I want to achieve greatness. Is I have to choose hard. I have to choose challenge and run towards it, not run away from challenge. And I think I mentioned this with Chris Polo in the last podcast that has been uploaded, episode 5, even though this is 7. There's a 6th in between here, but it requires a lot of editing because it was in person. Just talking about like my favorite book, Musashi, like how that has influenced me and how I see challenge now, because he is on his quest to become the world's greatest swordsman and samurai to ever roam the planet. And he is a nobody, an absolute nobody. His parents are gone, grew up in absolute poverty. He's a Ronin. He doesn't even have a master. Now, one of the things that I love is that he says he was approaching this gym to go, or as we would call it, a gym, a dojo, to go challenge its best person, and he's a nobody. And they're like checking all his credentials. They're like, yeah, fill out this waiver basically. Yeah, you can die here. And he's like, yeah. He got to the part where it said like, you can be maimed, hurt, or killed, and he like smiled. He's like, oh yeah, hell yeah, I can. Like he just like he's like, if I'm not facing death, it's not challenging enough. And I thought that that was such a cool little part. And then it talked about, hey, who's your master? Who did you get trained by? And he's a Ronin. He has no master. So he just wrote down everything in the universe. And it's
Hmm.
like, wow, what a truth that is. Like we try to ignore what the life, what the world, what God, the universe is trying to tell us on a daily basis, thinking we know everything as humans when we don't. And it's like God is always trying to, or the universe, whoever you believe in, right? It's all relative at the end of the day. It's all energy. And we often lose sight that we are being guided every day. And mindfulness, meditation, like we were talking to earlier about, in the sense of just personal development, it's like we need to listen to these things and see these challenges and hardships not as setbacks, but as, hey, what is this trying to teach me? What can I use from this insanely challenging time? Whether, I talk a lot about death on this podcast and losing loved ones and how that affects us and how that's challenging, but also how it grows us. And we can view it as the worst thing to ever happen, or view it as, wow, I wonder what this is trying to teach me. And developing that mindset of like, everything's a lesson, everything is to get me better in some way, shape, or form. How does someone develop that mindset of a student of life, as what I like to call it, where they're looking at death, they're staring at death and going like, bring it. They're staring at challenge and going like, bring it. Oh, this person has all these accredited credentials behind them and all this, and it's super intimidating. Bring it. Is that even something that people can develop if they've never trained it before? I think it is.
Yeah. I think it's a muscle.
Yeah.
And so you can work it out and you can train it and you can strengthen it and you have to flex it in order to get it to be stronger.
Yeah.
And if you stop flexing it, right? Let's say that you get it to be really, really strong and then you stop working it out for years and years and years, and it also reverts back to where it was before. And you do have some muscle memory, so you can bring it back faster, but oftentimes it becomes small again. So I do think that your capacity, which I think is what you're speaking to, you can increase your capacity as long as you're intentional about it. Um, I will say that two things. One, I definitely love sharks. I love sharks. They're my favorite animal in the world. I don't really want to swim with sharks. I am very scared of what a shark could potentially do to me, and I love living. I love living too much. I feel like I have too much potential to bring to the world that I don't really want to risk with that. I
Yeah.
also don't plan on skydiving. And it's not because I don't want to see what it's like, but it's just because like I don't know, like there's just certain risks that I'm just like, I don't know that I want to take that. And I'm sure people are gonna listen to this and be like, well, do you drive? Because driving's way more dangerous than those things. Yeah, I get it. I know, I understand. Okay. Mathematically, it doesn't make sense. But at the end of the day, like I think that there are certain risks that we should be averse to because it's like not safe. It's biological for us to go and stand at the edge of a cliff and look down and be like, I probably shouldn't jump because that's probably not gonna end well for me. Right. Like that's
Yeah.
part of our biology. Um, so so we do want to pay attention to that stuff, but we shouldn't use that as an excuse to just like never do anything hard, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, looking to find ways to do what you're talking about, Carson, with like increasing our capacity to do hard things, to push ourselves that extra mile. So valuable. And like when somebody asks you, hey, what are the things that you've done in your life, the experiences that you've had that you're the most proud of? They're never the things that were easy. They're never the things that were given to you, right? That you just like you were given God that given talent and you just use that. And you never pushed yourself. You never cite those things because they don't mean shit to you. They don't mean shit to anybody else.
There's no
Nobody's gonna.
drive. There was no pressure, like you said. And like, I definitely think that just had me a little introspectively think like, what are the most interesting stories that someone can tell? And it's always the shit that was like, this was extremely hard. I thought I was going to die. I thought I was going to lose everything, and I didn't. And I climbed up that mountain, and it was so hard. I bounced back from this detrimental area of my life. And yeah, like you said right now, like it's never the easy things, you know? And I think, it's you got a point there. Have you ever watched the movie Free Solo?
Yes.
I just watched it fully. I've watched like clips of it before, and I'm like, I gotta find where I can watch this. I watched it with my mom a couple nights ago. I'm just sitting there and I'm like, this guy's a psychopath. I respect it. I will never ever do anything like that. That's his mountain, literally, quite literally, that he's climbing. Everyone has their own mountain that they're climbing in life, that where you see this incredibly challenging task or feat, and it risks death. If that's in alignment with what you're trying to do, man, you're probably gonna just go say fuck it and do it. Like even with you, like running for president, in the future, there's going to be immense amounts of people rooting against you. A lot of risk putting yourself out there, because as I feel like as soon as someone puts themselves in the political sphere, it just immediately draws negativity, no matter what. Because like you said, it's so divisive. You're not going to please everybody, and it's like, yeah, you run the risk yourself of, you know, maybe losing some relationships with some people, and I'm sure you've probably thought intricately and deeply about, the risks in line of like putting yourself out there. And you I just, me knowing you, I know that's just not going to stop you, but you are aware that it is a reality because that's your mountain. You're like, yeah, shit's going to happen. There's going to be some bad moments, whether it's, caused by someone else or caused by an action that you did, because this is the message that you want to bring to the world, and this is the light that you want to shine on America. And I know we've already been speaking for quite a while, and so I would like to, start to wrap this up. And so I always ask everyone at the end of the podcast, like, what, obviously you have that largest peak that you're climbing towards is presidency. What are some of the other peaks that you have to do on route there, and how can we best support you?
Well, um, a lot of people ask me about that. A lot of people ask me like, what is the roadmap that I believe I have to follow in order to reach my North Star? And I think sometimes they're surprised by my answer to that, which is, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mm.
And that's okay. And I've had to learn to be okay with that. The fact that like I don't know everything. And there are a lot of things that are outside of my control. The what's going on right now in our society, for those for people who might not be like super engaged in even just like present day politics, the landscape is shifting dramatically. Not only are people more polarized than ever before, but there is a massive majority of people that I believe are like me and you that really are just like in the middle. And we're like, can we just stop? Can we just grow up? Can we just be friends? Can we just like agree, like realize that we're never going to agree on everything and that's okay. And that I don't have to hate you as a person just because I don't agree with every single thing that comes out of your mouth. And we can still work towards making things better. We might disagree on the methods, but we agree on the outcome that we want to realize. And so, in keeping with that, one thing that I believe is I want to hold my outcomes firmly and my methods fluidly. And what I
Mm.
mean by that is like things are going to change, and I have to be dynamic and I have to be nimble and I have to be willing to roll with the punches and realize that, like, I don't know if you or any of the listeners are Christian, but like there's a saying that's like, humans make plans and God laughs.
Yeah.
Things are going to happen, and I can try to plan as much as I want, which is prudent of me to do. And I also need to be really willing to hold it loosely in case things shift. Otherwise, I will never be able to adapt. So there are certain things that I think right now are aspirations that I have that are sort of benchmarks towards moving me towards the person that I need to become. I think one is just like continuing to do interactions like this and just like spread my message, spread awareness of what my aspirations are, how I want to help people and serve people. So I appreciate you having me on here because this already does such a huge benefit for me as far as moving me along that path, Carson. um I also think there is like a financial component. I need to make sure that I continue to work really hard, and that I serve people and treat people the right way so that I can build the type of net worth and network that allows me to run a campaign and and a platform that is aligned with my heart, that isn't influenced by special interest or super PAC money or anything like that. You know, I want people, again, like most of people in America, I believe right now are just sick of this. They're sick of corporations, they're sick of big pharma, they're sick of all of the other influences that go in, and they just want somebody who's a heart-centered leader. And in order to do that, unfortunately, like you have to have a lot of money to go against those people. And so go against those like those large corporations, or they just shout you down. And so that is something that I'm working really hard on is like how do I continue to amass such a good circle of influence that between myself and others we can source the type of money that we would need to be able to run an effective campaign that comes from a really aligned place. And then I think the last thing is just like continue doing right by people and realize that like I don't need to win over 330 million votes today. I just need to win one person at a time and treat people as if their vote is all that matters because it is. And at the end of the day, if enough people know that you're going to bat for them and not for some special interest, but really for them as a human being and their families and their children and their future, then hopefully that's all it takes for them to get on board with your message.
Man, I love all of that. Yeah, just handling it one person at a time, one heart, one person, one soul. And then what you said earlier too is like we make our plans and God laughs. And I that has just been so true to me because I know you and I are pretty extensive planners and whatnot. And I've recently learned to really detach from my planning and only plan when I'm in planning mode, when it makes sense to. And also like, hey, I want this outcome, like you said, but I have like I want to get to the top of this mountain. And there's been so many hikes that I've been on in life where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get up there and I just don't know how. I take this alternate route. I'm like, ooh, this looks cooler. This looks like a cooler route. Like, I love that you say that because I live that so much of just like, I know I need to get there and I want to get there. I just don't know how I'm going to do. I'm figure it out on my way. It's going to change. If I try to detail everything out, I'm going to be a little let down because it's not going to go that way. It never does. It always changes. It always pivots and adapts. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And for those of you that want to support Kyle even more, Kyle, where can people find you on the socials, the interwebs, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always, I think, first thing I'd say is like I'm always willing to support anybody with any questions they have, whether it's about business or finances or anything like that. Like I really do just want to make it super clear that I'm not better than anybody else. And anything that I've been able to accomplish, like I just want to give as much as I can with no expectation of anything in return. So if anybody has questions or they just want support around something, advice, even if you don't take it, like I'm just like reach out and I'd be happy to lend that to you for free. Um, the second thing that I would say is, yeah, as far as like finding me online, you can find me on Facebook, just Kyle Lopes. It's Lopes, not Z. It's a very common Portuguese last name, so I am not Latino by any means. I'm Portuguese, but yeah, Kyle Lopes. You can find me on Instagram. I think it's Kyle underscore Lopes and then the number 12, I believe. And then you can find me on LinkedIn. And I'd love to connect on LinkedIn, especially as I grow my professional platform as well. And that's it.
Listeners, reach out to him now. Like just reach out, support him now. Cause obviously as he gets more popular and starts getting more into the sphere, like it's not that he wouldn't want to chat with you. It's just gonna be harder. It's gonna be harder to reach. And so you guys get an awesome glimpse of just one of my favorite humans on the entire planet and just opening his brain up to us at oh someone started calling me. That's why I just took away the Zoom. It just like swapped my screens and I was like, what happened? And then yeah, someone's just an 800 numbers, just give me a call. That just shows I should have my laptop on do not disturb. But anyways, yeah, give him the support. Reach out to him now while he still has, time and energy to reach out to everyone that's reaching out to him. Cause yeah, at a certain point of time, years down the road, again, we don't know the path, but there'll be a time where Kyle's probably got a couple 100,000 followers. He's got, press conferences he's doing and whatnot. He's got a whole social media team running his, like, this is the best time to reach out to him. He is one of the best persons I know on this planet. My brother, thank you so much for joining us today. It is an honor, a blessing. It's a day that I've been looking forward to ever since I started the podcast. You were one of the first people I reached out to, and I was like, man, I hope he gets on it. And I was like, damn, I'm gonna be in Tahoe when he does this, but we're gonna fucking make it work because that's just what we do. So thank you, Kyle. And for those of you that are tuning in and have made it this far, climb on, and we'll see you at the next one.